wedding. It's not sung in a funeral or at a yisker, but I'm different from other people. The words miban siach, basically before the rabbi or whoever's conducting the wedding or chazan begins singing, these words say kind of, there are two understandings. There's a midrashic understanding and there's a regular one, but the one who can hear the conversations of the roses amid the thorns, and who understands the love of a bride and groom, let him be the one to come up now and sort of conduct the wedding. Let he who understands the conversation of the roses among the thorns. Ellen was a rose among thorns. She is now as well in a section of the cemetery where others are not yet lying. I'll be lying next to her one day. And her voice, this song is dedicated not only to her, but the melody has its own meaning. For many of you, many will recognize the melody. And it also, she remains my bride. As Rav for 40 plus years, and uniquely compassionate in many ways, I've counseled many widows and widowers, many divorcees. However, I never fully grasped how crushing divorce is, even when leaving a tough marriage, until it hit me. And I never fully grasped spousal death until HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought Ellen home to Gan Eden. It happens to be that Ellen actually was more unique than people know. I say this not only as a loving husband who lost his wife to Hashem's timetable, but as a witness with a unique vantage point Few people grasp how holy she was, what a level of tzaddiket walked and lived in our midst. Ellen was the daughter of very fine parents, but they did not initially have a Shomer Shabbat home. The mother had been reared with religion in Exeter, Pennsylvania. The father grew up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, with some learning, but was not fully Shomer. So the parents ended up at a conservative temple in Binghamton, New York, and they reared their children that way. Mom was a substitute elementary school teacher, and Dad worked in the post office, manually sorting envelopes by zip code 40 hours a week until a machine replaced him. But he was a real firecracker and a doll. It took a special hashgacha pratit, divine intervention. I've told this story many times about how the conservative temple in Binghamton decided to move to a fancier part of town, so instituted a steep building fund and further raised their membership dues too high for Ellen's parents to afford. That moved them over from the conservative temple to the Orthodox shul. As an unforeseen life turning point, the conservative temple consequently moved Ellen and her sister Sharon from the conservative congregation's USY teen group to the Orthodox shul's NCSY teen group. The group of young people in the shul all were very much like Ellen. They all attended public school and had parents who supported their kids, increasing interests in spending time with other Jewish youth in structured social and educational programs that mainly centered at the shul. The Saturday night kumsitzes, the sing-alongs, at the NCSY Shabbatonian grabbed 12-year-old Ellen Groh and propelled her toward her now and forever identity as Rebbetzin Ellen. The advisors at the kumsitzes played Beatles songs on their 12-string guitars, along with the more soul-stirring Jewish songs that accompanied Ellen's elective journey toward a more Torah-driven life. Indeed, Ellen's parents were frequent drivers and chaperones for the gatherings that involved trips to other cities in upstate New York, local bowling alleys and miniature golf courses, and the NCSY National Convention in the Catskills. Ellen's parents understood the powerful message of support that their participation meant to their teens. Ellen had a special fire for Judaism, for Torah, and for God in her soul, even then. Only as I heard her recount little tidbits of her life over the 21 years that we shared together did I realize what, not just whom, I had married. Ellen graduated summa cum laude from Syracuse University and had been socialized to aspire one day to be a school teacher. In college at Syracuse, she met Don, a modern Orthodox fellow with a wry and clever sense of humor. They met at the college's kosher food program. He was a good choice among the Orthodox college fellows. They married, and his law school journey brought her from upstate New York to the San Fernando Valley of California. Their very, very good marriage ended after 21 years for reasons that made sense. And just about the time when my marriage ended, Ellen hesitated to meet me. When she later married me, she was very hesitant. She feared marrying a rabbi. That would be too severe for her playful and sparklingly impromptu personality. Just couldn't see marrying a rabbi. But Linda Charlin, the Blessed Lady, who introduced us, persuaded Ellen that, number one, I'm not like any Orthodox rabbi she ever met. Number two, not like any Orthodox rabbi she ever will meet. Number three, not like any Orthodox rabbi anyone else is ever going to meet. I was mostly an attorney at that time, so Ellen was a bit less fearful and took a chance on me. In those days, in her mid-40s, she still wore pants, had not ever really covered her hair outside of shul, and was a modern Orthodox girl. I did make clear from our first phone call, which went on for hours upon hours, and I fell in love on that phone call. And our first date, where we sat talking at Pat's restaurant in LA for 3 more hours and did not order a thing until the waiter told us they were closing the kitchen and he wanted a tip. I told her I'm determined to leave law practice and return to Rabbanus, the rabbinate. So she knew that. No tricks and no shticks. But she was very clear. I will back you in every way, Dov. I will do everything I can to help you realize your dream. But please understand and accept that I am not a rebbitzen and I cannot ever be one. I promised to honor that, and I did. In my very first shul, after marrying and returning to the rabbinate, she still did not cover her hair, and she still wore pants. And I promised I would not refer to her as the rebbitzen, so I would refer to her as the rebbitzen. The thing is, I absolutely had to marry her. I'd fallen in love at that first phone call. The date that Pat's sealed the deal. As we talked that night, I mentioned something in the conversation about being in Israel and once being on a camel. And she asked me, was it a Bactrian or a dromedary? That blew me away. Who knew camels had 2 different religions? She not only was beautiful, sparkling and funny, but she knew stuff. As we spoke, she mentioned that she had attended a speech I had given 10 years earlier to a Shabbat afternoon women's group in Valley Village in the San Fernando Valley. And I had been a scholar in residence that Shabbat. I was winding down in my rabbinic career, going into law. And she started reciting my speech from 10 years ago. It was like a student reciting the Gettysburg Address. I couldn't believe it. For those of you who ever find yourselves giving advice to people on ideas on how to do a first date, that works. At the time, I had no idea she had such a remarkable photographic memory. It's a great device. And yet she could be so quirky. We became a known commodity in the Yahrzeit Tzedek community of North Hollywood, Valley Village, and the Valley. And we started receiving Shabbat lunch invitations. One Shabbat at the Wiesenbergs, David and Jamie, they also had a Russian couple at the table. During lunch, I mentioned, I know 4 Russian words. Da, niet, spasiba, and peshalister. And then Ellen surprised everyone at the table by saying, I also know 4 Russian words. And everybody quieted down. They didn't expect that. You have to have grown up in the 1960s to appreciate it. Ellen then told us the 4 Russian words that she knew. And she came up with this at the spur of the moment. Get, moose, and squirrel. At that moment, I knew I can't let this girl go. I've got to marry her, maybe before dessert. When Beth Jacob of Irvine intensively courted me in 2002 and begged me to come down from Calabasas, it all came down to Ellen. They had turned away so many candidates during the year or 2 after they had parted ways from Rav Landau that no one serious was left in the pot. So Beth Jacob begged me, and Yeshiva University's rabbinic placement director called me daily, pleading that I take the position. They started pressuring Ellen to pressure me, but Ellen was adamant that she would never tell her husband what to do, and I never would tell her to conduct her professional career. That was our agreement. So it was surprising and flattering, and it became ridiculous, the daily phone calls. The more we said no, the more money they offered. They finally got to $150,000. When they hit that, Ellen said, let's go down for the interview. So they insisted on interviewing us both together. At the interview, By the way, just an aside, when I practiced law and I interviewed at Jones Day and Aiken Gump, they didn't require me to bring my wife to the job interview. At the interview, they decided right away to hire me, except for one problem. Ellen would have to cover her hair, and she would have to stop wearing pants. And she would have to start teaching a monthly class for the women on Rosh Chodesh. I said at the interview, it's all up to Ellen. That's our relationship. Ellen decided then and there at the interview, if this is what it will take for you to get the position, Dov, if you truly want this position, if this is your last best opportunity you ever again in your lifetime will have to realize your dream and be rabbi of a decent-sized shul, then I will cover my hair from now on, and I will not wear pants anymore. But I insist on one thing. Don't ever call me a rebbitzen. I am no rebbitzen. I might not wear pants. I might have my hair covered. I'm still the rebbitzen. I manage I manage investigations of white-collar million-dollar fraud. That's what I do. And so it was. She remained the rebbitzen. As they insisted that she teach that monthly Rosh Chodesh class for women, Ellen sat one day and asked me to explain to her the hierarchy and architecture of Jewish law, how each piece fits. Chumash, Navi, Mishnah, Gemara, Mishnah Torah, Mishnah Brura, Shulchan Aruch, Sheilus and Shuvas, Responsa. For 2 whole weeks, she sat with a spiral notebook every night after a long day at UCLA. She'd have a 2-hour drive in the morning to UCLA. She'd be at UCLA working all day. She'd come home after investigating and putting people in prison, and she would pull out her notebook when she walked in the door, get something to drink, and I taught her each night for 14 days. I showed her all the Sfarim, all the books in our home library of 4,000 volumes, what's what, where and how to find sources. She learned with me for those 2 weeks until she knew everything I had taught and showed her. For the next 2 years at Beth Jacob, whenever Rosh Chodesh was a week or 2 away, she would begin spending hours upon hours in our home library, preparing her next class. I insisted she was overdoing it. It simply does not have to be on that high a level. She said to me, they expect this of their rebbitzen. I responded, first, with all due respect, you're wrong. They do not expect you to present a shiur on this high class on this high level. Second, I remind you, as per your own insistence, from the day you met me, you need not think of yourself as a rebbitzen. And she responded, but they look on me as a rebbitzen. They need a rebbitzen. And I owe it to them and you, if they hired you, they deserve to have a rebbitzen. So she started davening shacharit in her own family room privately, 45 minutes every morning. No one saw her doing it, but she felt it's time to be a rebbitzen, to show it to no one but God that she wants to serve him in this new role. When we drove to Los Angeles or to visit family or friends whom we had left behind in the San Fernando Valley, she no longer would take off her hat or wear pants. My family and her friends of 20 years did not recognize her, and yet they did. They quickly saw she was still the same Ellen. Same personality, same sense of humor, nothing pretentious. She simply had internalized and taken on the role of rebbitzen. She taught Kala class to women for whom I was Mesader Kedushin, women whom I helped marry. To do so effectively, she spent hours with Rebbetzin Esther Tendler, a real scholar and great rebbitzen of decades, who taught her all there was to teach Kala's prospective brides. She came with me to be Menachem Avel whenever we would visit mourners at their homes. She attended the annual Rebbitzins Conference in Hancock Park, Los Angeles, sponsored by National Council of Young Israel and the Rabbinical Council of California. She hosted and taught Shabbat guests at our home. Finally, on the occasion of our 50th anniversary, This is California. I bought her new California vanity license plates from the Department of Motor Vehicles. This became her California license plate. Rebbetzin. I didn't misspell it on purpose. You only get 7 spots. Every Shabbat morning for the rest of our marriage, the rest of her life, as we walked out of our home past the car that was parked in front of our home, Ellen would look at me and ask, Dov, did I earn my plates this week? The answer always was yes. By the time she was diagnosed with the illness, I realized I no longer was the stronger religious influence impacting the other spouse in our home. I initially had raised her up, and now she was raising me up. If it had not been for her, I would have spent the rest of my life as a litigation attorney, a good one, but wasting my life's destiny and never fulfilling my calling to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God. Each and every person whose life I ever touched, personally or positively, since the day I met Ellen, Zecher Tzedekes Livracha, was touched only because of her influence and merit. All the battles and fights, designing and building a mikveh, starting a Sephardic congregation, starting a weekly Friday night davening at the proper candle time, bringing in Derek and Sarah to live full-time here to run NCSY for new generations of teenagers, laying the foundation for an Orthodox day school as an alternative to TVT, running 2 public communal Siddharim each Pesach, moving the Beth Jacob Purim Seudah from nighttime to the proper halachic time in the afternoon of Purim, intimidating the Irvine mayor and city council finally to stop creating obstacles to finishing our Eruv, starting a Daf Yomi Shir, starting a daily Mincha Minyan, even in the summer, and so much more was because of Ellen, Zecher Tzedekes Livracha. Yes, I'm the one who did it, but I would not have been here to do any of it if she had not made that possible. As Rabbi Akiva said, and I mentioned in my email, when he returned after 20 years of learning Torah, he had been an illiterate lout, a farmhand, and Rachel, the daughter of the equivalent of a millionaire agricultural tycoon, at whose farm Rabbi Akiva worked, said to this lout, if you go and you learn, I'll marry you. And he went and he stayed. And after 20 years, when he came back, the greatest famous rabbi of his era, accompanied by thousands, she came out to greet him. And she was getting pushed aside, essentially, lady, get out of the way. Do you know who's coming? And he stopped the crowd and he said, Shali v'shalachem kula shalah. Everything I have, everything you all have from me, it's all hers. And so it was with Ellen. And that's why I am so much in love, not only a husband in love with a wife, but someone who truly knows, not merely saying a nice thing to just give an accolade. I really know what she did for my life, and therefore for so many of ours. In closing, amid all the unfortunate stuff that might have broken me, she stood by me like a wall in a fortress, inspiring me to continue. She stood by me as we founded YIOC, Young Israel of Orange County. Just one word of hesitancy from her, I would have given up. But she wouldn't let me give up as long as she sensed that within me. It remained my passion to be a Rav and to continue to do my best for Klal Yisrael, for the Jewish people. Then, when I expanded after Beth Jacob to publishing writings to a much wider audience in several publications, so that my words, thoughts, and influence could reach thousands throughout America and Israel, rather than only 150 in Irvine, and then to playing significant roles in trying to help change the course of the Rabbinical Council of America, and then co-founding Coalition for Jewish Values, and so much else that I do. She stood by me every step of the way. Diagnosis, and lived her life every day. I continued to be blown away. She asked me to promise that no one ever would say or write about her, quote, she died after a long battle with cancer, unquote. I honored that promise scrupulously. She asked that of me because, as I saw and experienced firsthand, and as she demonstrated every day, she did not battle cancer, not for a moment. Rather, she just continued living the life she always had been living, as though she were on track to live to 120, as a rebbitzen who ultimately came to counsel and advise other younger future rebbitzins, as a wife who could not have role modeled the words of Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, more perfectly if she'd auditioned before King Solomon Shlomo HaMelech himself for the role, as a stepmother who could not have loved her stepchildren deeper, and yet always deferred to their birth mother's unique place of honor in their lives, and as a devoted daughter who phoned her dad religiously every morning at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time so as to catch him as he was finishing his 8:30 a.m. Eastern time breakfast at the Jewish seniors home in Massachusetts, in time to talk about and update him on her day the day before, to have him tell all about his day the day before, and then she would wish him luck as he would embark on another grueling day of bingo until the last day of her life. She was sharp to the very end. She recited brachot every meal to the very end. When she no longer could stand and daven from a sitter for 45 minutes each morning because of the unfolding physical limitations, she and I, sang Zemirot together every night for 45 minutes. I needed a sitter for some of them, like Yona Matzah, Deror Yikra. I just don't know all the words by heart. By contrast, she never needed a sitter. She knew every last word by heart to the last day. That is the tzaddiket who lived in our midst. I invite Chazan Erblich, if Chazan's here, to take over now and to unmute. I have to figure out how to unmute. Chazan Erblich, if you start talking, I guess your square will move to the front. I think I set it up, but let's see if I do something. Okay. I'm going to allow participants to unmute so that Chazan Erblich can, oh, there you are. I see you. Just in time. Chazan Erblich, I think this will get you unmuted. Hold on a second. Ask to unmute. Try it. If you can't unmute, okay, there you are.
Can you hear me, Rabbi?
Perfectly. It feels right now like Yom Kippur. I hear you so well.
Thank you. Rabbi, you have been mentioning about the rebbitzen. She wanted to be called rebbitzen. I, as a cantor, Leah prefer to be called Contessa.
I understand.
You've been talking about the whole discussion about the rebbitzen. I once heard from a rebbitzen, what is a rebbitzen? And she was asked. This is what she said. My husband, the rabbi, serves the shul and the community, but I serve the rabbi. Well, in that case, Ellen was not a rebbitzen, because I'm going to tell you that she actually was a rebbitzen of the highest level. What is a rebbitzen? A person who devoted herself. I'm sure everybody knows or knew Ellen, and they can explain and expound and stories galore, because she was Malei Olam. Not in the sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but as a human sense, everybody loved her. But from my end, and Leah, I speak on behalf of Leah and myself, we lived in the house, Yom Tovim, Shabbosim, meal after meal and after meal. She served everyone. She was the rebbitzen, not serving you, the rabbi, no, serving everybody with you. And I have shpilkes in my, you know what. So I would get up and take some plates and help out to take inside and to clear the table a little bit. No, Bookie, please sit down. You're a guest. Everybody's a guest. Don't do. She would stand alone in the kitchen and work. This is a Rebbetzin who worked and slaved for the community, preparing a kiddush behind the shul from the next room, so that in between we had a repast. Ellen was absolutely special. Ellen was a mother. Did she have children? You bet she did. You bet she did. The rabbi is the parent of the children, so was Ellen. She took care of them. She consoled them. She was part of them. She was always there for them. A mother, a husband, a rebbitzen, a friend. Oy lanu, woe is to us that we miss her so much. When she was ill, was she ill? She was ill. We knew that. But you didn't see it on her. When I would come, oh, hello, Chazan. Hello, Leila. How are you? How are the kids? Everything is fine. Everything is good. She was ill, but she did not show it. Who didn't love Ellen? We all did. In this way, I'd like to also give the rabbi and the rebbitzen today that they should have a long life, a happy life, and a good life together. And we should all enjoy the companionship and the friendship and love in the community of Young Israel of Orange County. At this time, I'd like to...
Please recite the Kelmali.
Yeah, I will be standing up.
Yes.
אלמלא רחמים שויכם במרומים המצא מלוכלכנו על כנפי ומי השכינו במעלויז קדושים וטהורים כזוהיר Mazeim Eseni Shemaz Chane Esther Bas Reb Chaim Reuven She'olecho Olelamo Ma'amu Shekol Adesapim Ekan מתפללים ביד עלייה שנשמסו בגן עדן תמנוחסו לא כן באו רחמים יסתיר להו בסייסק נפו ליילמים וצרוי החיים אס נשמוסו אדוני יונח עלו עשו ושונאו רוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Chassan Erblith. It's been an honor for Ellen all these years to have known you and your unique relationship with our family. It's just more than I can ask for. It's been a great gift to us. And we're so grateful that you were able to be here today and to recite Kelmali. Thank you. Debbie Chinsky-Wapniak has been a close friend of Ellen for more years than I know. When Ellen would be driving to UCLA, she was on the road 2 hours each way. And I don't know how Ellen did it. In fact, at that initial job interview, two of the people at the interview who had worked in LA told her it's never going to happen, that they had come to Irvine and learned they no longer could continue the commute. When Ellen spoke about her work at UCLA, as they wanted to know more about her, they said, you'll never be able to do it. From Irvine daily, you'll be leaving within a year. And Ellen continued more than 12 years from Irvine daily. On many of those drives, what kept her sane was telephone calls with Debbie Chinsky-Wapniak, a lifelong friend. I invite Debbie to unmute her mic and to—
I did. Can you hear me?
Please begin.
Okay. When I was asked to speak today, my initial thought was, what memories can I share of the years I spent being close friends with Ellen? I thought, I don't have Ellen's ability to recall the past. How am I going to remember what it was like to be young and first starting out in life? Because that was what we were when Ellen and I first met. My husband, Marty, and I lived in Los Angeles. Marty had met Ellen's ex-husband, Don, in Shoal, and Ellen and I met when we all went out on a double date. We went to the movies to see a Don Adams Maxwell Smart movie. And the only reason I remember this is because Ellen reminded me of it on one of our more recent phone conversations. It always amazed me how she could remember things from our past, the names of people we'd met from years ago. And it always warmed me to think that whenever I would speak to her, she would remind me of something that was long buried somewhere in the archives of my mind. I don't have Ellen's awesome memory, so it would be nearly impossible for me to even try to piece together the threads of our past life experiences. I guess that's not what really is important. What really matters is that we shared them. And if sometimes my mind flashes back on something we did or something she said, well, then for me, that's a bonus. Ellen and I were close like sisters. It always struck me as a little odd that we were so perfect as friends because we led very different lives. There wasn't anything I couldn't share with her. She was bright and intuitive and fiercely an independent, career-oriented woman. She had an impressive job at UCLA, and I know she was tough and really strong. All through our friendship, I admired her for this. On the flip side, I was open, revealing, and a hopeless romantic. But we had something very valuable in common that bound us together. We were dependable and loyal, and we trusted each other implicitly. When she needed someone to hear her out in confidence, she could come to me, and I felt the same way. The truth is, even though our paths crossed often, we saw each other in shul and shared meals on an occasional Shabbos, Ellen's and my friendship was primarily conversing on the phone. We were like verbal pen pals, and I think we spoke just about every other evening when both of us were free to chat. I couldn't imagine a week going by without reaching out to her. When my first husband was diagnosed with melanoma and began his decline, our community tied itself around me. I became the talk of the town. My everyday activities became fodder for general public, and even though I appreciated everything everyone did for my family, it was very difficult to trust anyone with my personal feelings. But I could trust Ellen. She comforted me when I cried, and we would find reasons to laugh through my deepest stresses. Her voice was always the voice of reason for me, and her clarity of thought was invaluable. When Ellen went through her divorce, I was there for her too. She told me things that she would never share with anyone else, and I listened with all the patience that she had shown me. We were two older single women spending hours on the phone chatting about being out there and wondering how we would ever manage to navigate the wonderful world of dating, how we perceived our present lives, and where we were going. I loved her article, "I Won't Go After Your Husband, Please Don't Sit Me with the Teens." It was hysterical, and it was just the thing that we would have laughed about. I still hear the sound of her giggle. I can still see her face, and I can still hear her voice in my head. That hasn't faded. I suppose it's the fear of forgetting her that has kept me from erasing her last voice message to me. It's not the same lighthearted, clear sound from when she was healthy, but it was still Ellen. Ellen was the first friend I introduced my second husband to. I wasn't ready for anyone to know I was dating seriously, but I could tell Ellen. I remember the evening that I introduced Elliot to Ellen. Her opinion was one of the most important to me. So when she told me that she liked him, it was golden. Even Even when I got married and moved across the country, Ellen and I stayed close. Of all the many people I knew in LA, Ellen remained my intimate friend. We still talked about our everyday lives and still connected with our hearts. She was a working woman and I was a stay-at-home mom, but I think we lived vicariously through each other, tasting each other's way of life and admiring each other for our strengths and helping each other through our weaknesses. And Ellen was there when I lost my precious daughter, Ita. She knew Ita from the day she was born, and she was witness to the incredible close bond that we shared. We talked endlessly about my struggle to move forward with my life and to overcome the shock and the grief of losing a child. So yes, Ellen and I were friends for over 40 years through thick and through thin, until one day something changed. When I got married for the third time in 2017, suddenly and unexpectedly, Ellen stopped taking my phone calls. I would try to reach out to her, but my calls would go to voice message. And on that rare occasion that she would take my call, she was clipped and reserved. She would tell me everything was okay, that she would get back to me, but she didn't. Honestly, I thought I'd hurt her. I thought I'd done something terrible to destroy our friendship. I was confused and saddened, and eventually I just stopped trying. It wasn't that I was angry with her. I knew that Ellen was a private person, and I really respected her for that. It wasn't until 2 years later that she would finally call and explain to me why she pulled away the way that she had. That phone call will stay with me forever. She started out by saying, "Hi, can we talk?" And relief just flooded through me. I was overjoyed just to hear her voice. And even though I was apprehensive about what she was going to say, I couldn't possibly have been prepared for what she was about to tell me. Her next words almost killed me. She began by telling me that the reason she'd chosen to pull away from me was because she had been battling brain cancer. I was dumbfounded. In my wildest dreams, I never would have thought she could be sick. I was never not truthful with Ellen. She knew that. She knew I would tell it like it is. In 2012, I lost my second husband to the same type of cancer that Ellen had been diagnosed with. So Ellen and I had had very intimate conversations during his struggles. So she understood that I had definite knowledge of what she was suffering from. She also knew that I knew her condition was quite possibly terminal. Ellen told me that she did not want to hear this from me. She was afraid that I would express it to her, that I would be bluntly honest to her, and it would undermine her confidence in her continued efforts to conquer her cancer. For the first time in our history as friends, Ellen underestimated me. She didn't understand that I knew the power of positive thinking. I never would have let on that I knew where her cancer was taking her. I would not only have encouraged her to keep fighting, but I would have reinforced that belief that miracles do happen and new treatments and new therapies come out every day. But what I learned from that conversation that we had was how happy she'd been, how she loved being married to Dov, how much she admired him. She was thrilled to be the rebbitzen of the shul and enjoyed preparing meals for Friday night. She marveled at the fact that she felt comfortable in a position of influencing so many people and being a major part of a growing community. And I was happy for her. Despite her illness, I knew she was contented and without a doubt had finally found her way home. Ellen's last phone call to me came just before she had her last surgery. She said, "Deb, I can't go into surgery without talking to my best friend, my true friend." And I told her that I loved her and that I knew she'd come home out okay, because I knew that's where she wanted to be most of all. I cried after we hung up. I cried because COVID made it impossible for me to be with her. I remember waiting until I got word that she had survived the surgery, but she was never the same. The Ellen I knew was gone. I would call her while she struggled to recover, and the nurse would hold the phone up to her ear, and I'd say hello and tell her everything was going to be okay, and to have a nice day and to listen to what the nurses told her to do so that she could get better and go home. I think about her often. I like to remember us as being young and a little silly, but insanely loyal to each other. How many people do we meet in our lifetime that we can truly call our soulmate? We were so lucky to have our friendship, and we were so lucky to have each other for all of those years. Sometimes when I think of Ellen, I can imagine her skipping along the cosmos with Ita and laughing about something Marty or Elliot would have said, maybe catching a breeze or watching Dove sleep. But right now, at this moment, I can imagine her looking down on us and seeing all of our beating hearts while remembering how deeply we loved her and how much we always will. Most of all, I miss her. I pray that her beautiful neshama has a continued aliyah. I pray she will go to bat for us up there, plead to Hashem to protect us in Israel during these most difficult times, that she will be a Melitz Yashar for Dov and his entire family and all of Klal Yisrael. May we all merit to see many more smachot, and may we be zocher to see Mashiach come in our lifetime.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I'm so grateful. That's why I asked you to have sort of this keynote place in the program. Kinneret, my daughter, of course, I have 4 children. I'm asking Kinneret to unmute. I have 4 children, and the oldest, Yael, was out of the nest when Ellen came into my life. Kinneret was about 17 or 18 as Ellen first came into my life. And she and Ellen soon forged a very special relationship. I've asked Kinneret to say some words. Please unmute.
Hi. Thank you, Debbie, for those just really just heartbreaking words. So there's so many different places to start today. I think what's most alive for me to speak from is this unique relationship of a stepmother or a bonus mother. This past year, I've had a chance to step into that relationship with 3 children, and it's really shifted how I understand Ellen's relationship in my life. I see like what a difficult, what a sensitive role that is. To my brother is, I think, going to speak in a little bit, and he was younger at the time, and so that was a different kind of relationship that she had with him. But with me, it was sort of, I was 17 or 18, as my dad said, and I remember loving reading. I was reading a lot of Emerson at the time. Reading Ralph Waldo Emerson and reading also Ralph Waldo Ellison. And my dad reminded me, I didn't need his reminder, Abba, but I very much remember that I got the book Juneteenth that was published posthumously by Ellison. And Ellen was such an avid reader. She loved ideas and loved loved reading biographies about presidents, and whatever I was reading or interested in, it was, I remember that there was just a curiosity. She didn't have to know the author or the reason why. There was just a sense of appreciation for that being part of my path. But I notice a lot now, as in this relationship as a bonus mother, as a stepmother, that it's such a, it's so sensitive to honor the primary mother and to bless the primary mother's relationship with the children. And at the same time to like offer your own uniqueness and offer your own blessing, that the mother sometimes just, that's different role, maybe. And I remember so much like, when my mom was married to her in her second marriage and my dad was with Ellen, I remember all of us going out to Starbucks when I would come back from college. All 5 of us would go out. And I remember I would come back maybe just for a Shabbat or a weekend, and there was a limited amount of time. And so everyone just kind of came together in these really sweet ways that we could all, I only had to share the stories from college one time to the audience. And I just remember Ellen really buying me books, just loving to find out like what was my latest interest, and yeah, and just always honoring my mom. The other thing that's coming to me to say is for me, when I light Shabbat candles, I think right after I light, usually the first place I go to is I see my my ancestors, the women who have passed, and there's my great grandmother and my great aunt, And it was really clear after Ellen passed that she's doing that circle. And so it's really, Debbie, like I really resonated when you said like you can still feel her energy. Like I have that very lived sense of a presence that I contact like every Friday night. And in a way, like I didn't speak to her very much during the year, maybe an email around the birthday, an email around Mother's Day, an email around her birthday. But yeah, it changes. I guess it's part of what I'm discovering also is that like a relationship is not just frozen in time and then it gets replayed, but like there's a way that it keeps living as I keep growing up. And yeah, I feel really grateful to see so many people gathered here, and what a sweet thing you've put together, Abba. So
Thank you so much, Kinara, and thank you so much for having really spoken from your heart. That was a little bit gutsy because you knew we're on a time frame, and you decided to risk just speaking from your heart, and that the words would come to you as I knew they always beautifully did and would. I love you very much, and thank you. By the way, I guess you've also fulfilled your obligations for Father's Day now, so you don't have to call me later on and send me a card. Regards to everybody at home. Judy Lappin is next on our schedule. Judy Lappin and Michael Lappin co-founded the shul with the Jacobson family, Steve and Corinne, with the Kravitzes, Ethel and Colin, Ellen and me. There were very few of us who had not only the guts and the vision to take a chance. Judy, over the years, became just involved in every aspect of the shul in a leadership role, and would take it on when I hated to ask her for yet another responsibility. We do an annual hotel program, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, so that people who all year long do not keep Shabbat, at least 3 days a year, have the opportunity to be at a hotel where they don't have to drive, they don't listen to TV, and they can really make a religious program for it and have the maximum spirituality. And at the same time, we do the meals. And Judy just puts the whole thing together annually. And then when we decided we're not really a shul that does an annual banquet, but for the 10th anniversary, let's do it. Judy put that together, and so many more things. I asked Judy if she would speak a few words because she and Michael had become so close to us, would spend Shabbat at our homes. And also, so I'm going to ask Judy to unmute. And right before you start, Judy, just want to give everyone a sense, those who are on the program, many are watching but don't know what's going on, so they don't know if this is going to go on all day. Just so you see, Judy will be speaking. Elaine will be speaking for about 3 minutes. Then we're going to have two phone calls that Ellen left for people asking them to come to Hanukkah. A 2-minute segment of Ellen and me singing. Going to have a few words from Peter Koo. Then our son Aharon, Ellen's and my son Aaron, and Ellen's stepson, and then Lisa Pearl, and then concluding with a melody. So we're on schedule, and please, Judy, unmute and please go forward. And if you're having, let me see if I can do this ask to unmute, I click that. Now try to unmute. Does that work better?
Yes, that's
okay.
Good, Rabbi. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi. I had a wonderful friend in Ellen Fischer. She was truly one of a kind. A devoted rebbitzen, a completely observant professional woman who led a double life as a highly effective fraud investigator. Totally amazing. The better we got to know each other, the more we realized how much we had in common. There was never enough time for us to be together with the demands of Ellen's 2 worlds, but we made up for it as we could, chatting during Kiddush or in her kitchen, sharing news or a laugh while cleaning up after our many Friday night dinners together or the occasional long Shabbat afternoon. I watched her admiringly as she welcomed guests into her home as if she'd had nothing to do all day except prepare for them, or as she greeted a newcomer to shul with her amazing smile, her easy laugh, putting any stranger at ease. And as you know, Ellen was always very stylishly dressed. Our taste in clothes was very similar, and we would text each other an alert when we came across the very hard to find clothing brand that had a skirt that was modest enough for our lifestyles. She was very particular in her home as to how her table settings looked, at show on how Kiddush was set up or the organization of the Yom Tov meals at Back Bay. If she ever asked you to help, it was a huge compliment. You had earned your stripes on how she wanted every detail to be. Across a 3-year period, as Rabbi mentioned, I had the honor of organizing the Hotel Rosh Hashanah program for Young Israel. And as much work as it was, my reward was when Ellen told me, "Judy, this is always my favorite holiday." For me, it was a small way to pay her back for all she gave to me and our congregation. Whenever I asked Ellen how she handled all that she did, she was absolutely resolute in her response. She assured me that she considered herself so blessed with the life she had, and that its every demand just made it that much more rich. In closing, I'd like to share a comment written by Rabbi Steinsaltz from his interpretation of Ashes Heil that rings so true of Ellen. The woman of valor cares not only for her own needs, but for the needs of all who depend on her and are connected with her. She does not conduct herself as a great lady, giving orders to others while she sits idle. Rather, she herself arises early while the others are still asleep to do her work. Besides being industrious, she is concerned for others, for even before they are up, she is hard at work, making sure they will all be able to start their day peacefully. May her memory be a blessing to us all. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Judy. Thank you for your words, really very deeply. You're so precious to her. Mark and Elaine Gershenson of Palm Springs are members of our shul and have been for a long, long time. They were first introduced to us, I think, by Art Metz and Lita Metz. And we're honored to have Elaine, because they were out in Palm Springs. In order for them to get the full Young Israel of Orange County, get their money's worth for their annual dues, they would come and be with us for Shabbos several times a year. So we got to know Elaine and Mark in a different way from some others, because they, as with the Lappins, spent several Shabboses at our home, Shabbatot. I've asked Elaine to speak a few words, and Elaine, if you would unmute and speak a few words, would be an honor for us.
Okay, can you hear me?
Absolutely. Yes. Now we can't. We could when you said, "Can you hear me?" I'll try again. Ask to unmute. Please try unmute. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's why they create technology. That's why
right.
people.
I've had
That's
a lot
why
of
people
trouble
make
with
a.
technology this morning.
That's why people make a full annual income just being IT professionals. They always put something on your computer to screw it up a week or two later to be sure they get called back. Go ahead.
Over a decade ago, our small but Hamish modern Orthodox shul in Palm Springs collapsed due to attrition. And Mark and I needed a taste of a similar community for ourselves and our daughters, at least for Yom Tovim and the occasional Shabbat. We found Young Israel Orange County through the Metzes, where we felt welcomed by all. Eventually, the Fishers hosted us for Shabbat. We became periodic participants in their Friday night collection of mostly young people wishing to connect more deeply with Judaism and/or conservative values. Learning from and about Ellen happened mostly on walks to and from shul. She regaled me with stories from long before we met. There was her youth in upstate New York, where her father was sure he had to have eyes on her at all times to dissuade possible escapades. But the surveillance wasn't needed. Ellen was an Ashes Heil before she was an Ashes Heil. I was privileged to hear of that first long phone call with Dov, the happy stepmom antics with Aaron as they hung their legs over the back of the sofa like bats, the support she gave financially and emotionally as they were attacked by leadership and members of their previous shul, and the joys as they grew this warm community of Young Israel, where her dearest Dov could continue to pursue his true vocation. In this, she reached an epitome as Rebbetzin Fischer. I learned about current times too, unspoken lessons on how to entertain so graciously for such a varied group, including us crazy vegetarians, and spoken ones, including recipe tips such as how to make the best bean and lentil soup. Add a spoonful of sugar. Through her words and my observations and the comments of others, I could see Ellen's ability to watch over their flock without sharing too much or too little, but like Goldilocks, doing it just right. As shul leaders, it's hard to let your hair down around your flock, but Mark and I were just distant enough to be allowed a little more personalized view. In Ellen, there was the amusement in Motzi Shabbos doing a shtisel, and her obvious pride in how it helped them both better converse in Hebrew. Reading Ellen's articles and hearing her joy as she recounted being asked to write them. Listening to her retell the taco and ice cream work party story. Observing those serious biographies about earlier US presidents scattered on the couch, and how her eyes sparkled when she said Dov kept her in full supply of these tomes as gifts for special occasions. I also learned how she found the perfect modest travel shirts for the Tennessee trip and her mode for purchasing those lovely Shabbos suits. She said maybe the Star Trek costume at that one perm years before was a bit much, and worried that that most flattering and becoming variegated blue dress Rabbi bought for her perhaps made her a little too becoming. I laughed and said a wife should look like a queen. She wore the dress to our daughter's wedding in September of 2019 and repeatedly told me how joyous the dancing was for her, with no indication it could be her last. These commentaries were abyssal of her less public self. There are many anecdotes, but I would like to end with a story of Ellen's strength and stoicism. As her treatments progressed, she still desired to walk to shul with Rabbi. On one of our last trips, the weather looked ominous, but we put on raincoats and headed out for Back Bay. After services, the rain began. Before we got home, it was driving down in sheets, but Ellen just kept going, her face a mask of, I can do this, as she did to the end.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you so very, very much. At this point, I'd like to share some of Ellen. These are, as I mentioned earlier, we sang 45 minutes together each night in the last months, and I've got 2 minutes of that. I had planned actually to have somebody professionally record us singing together, despite my voice being in that recording, but she passed away a week before when we were going to be doing that. Nevertheless, one of our caregivers surreptitiously had videoed 2 minutes of that singing. And my son Aharon converted that to a sound play. So I'm going to play that together with the 2 1-minute phone calls. Someone saved one of the many, 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 many Michaels in our shul. Our shul has half the Michaels in the United States. And before Hanukkah, each year, the Hanukkah party, Ellen would always make phone calls the Sunday before the party to try to get people to come to the program and the party. And 2 people have saved me, have sent me 1-minute voicemails that she left. For the first one, the singing together, you may need to increase the volume on your machine a little because it's not quite as loud. Phone call.
Hello, Michael. It's Ellen Fischer, Rabbi Fisher's wife, calling on Sunday. It's about 20 minutes to 2. And I'm calling because I'm trying to develop a head count for food and feeding purposes for the Young Israel of Orange County Hanukkah party, which, as you probably know from Rabbi's emails, will be held next Sunday, December 17th at the Back Bay Conference Center, otherwise known as Irvine Lane, 5:30 p.m. We will have the candle lighting followed by a buffet dinner, followed by a program. And the details of the program are in the rabbi's email. I, on the other hand, am calling just to get a sense of food and feeding. So if you would be so kind as to call my cell phone, which is this number that I'm calling from, 818-424-7777. Again, area code 818-424-7777. And if you like, you can text me. The rabbi does not text, he only emails, but I do text. Just be sure to let me know who it is that's texting, because I may not recognize your phone number when you text. Okay, hope to hear from you soon, and it was a pleasure having you for dinner on Friday night, as always. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
There's the one 2 years later, another invitation.
Hello, Michael. This is Ellen Fischer calling on Monday, December 16th, somewhere around 11 a.m. Michael, I'm calling to find out whether you will be attending the Young Israel of Orange County Hanukkah party, which I'm sure you've read is to be held this coming Sunday, December 22nd at 5:30 p.m. at Back Bay, starting with the food at 5:30, followed by the stand-up comedy routine of Mark Schiff. Michael, I'm making calls today, even if you've communicated already with Rabbi Fisher. I'm trying to avoid being court-martialed and losing my rebbitzen rights. So I'm calling this morning, December 16th, just to get some attendance figures. Michael, if you would be so kind as to call my cell phone, area code 818-424-7777. Again, Ellen Fisher, 818-424-7777. Please feel free to leave a voicemail on my cell phone. Thanks so much. Hope you can attend. Please confirm. Thanks so much. Be well and happy Hanukkah. Bye-bye.
And that you were able to hear everything from her sense of humor to her professionalism. And she ended up never being court-martialed. Instead, we ended up giving her more medals as time went on. I'd like to invite next speaker would be Peter Koo. We have three more: Peter, Aharon, and Lisa. I'd like to invite Peter Koo. Peter, in 1994, I began practicing law at Jones Day Rebbetzin Pogue, one of the top law firms in the world, but I did not really want to be doing it. I did not show it on my face, but I'm a rabbi. I'm not. I often say I may have been a great lawyer, and I may be a lousy rabbi, but I'm a rabbi. On the subject of lawyer, by the way, at this moment, I'd like to just thank the several law students of mine from the past 16 years, including Alexandra Sagona and Norvik Azarian, Ike Song. I know I made a mistake by starting because now I'm going to leave someone out. I'm grateful to the law students here because after Ellen retired 4 years ago, she started coming with me to law school every Wednesday. We shared the 2-hour drive together and the 2-hour drive back. And she sat in both my 2-hour lectures my classes for 4 hours. With one eye and ear, she was reading her book on Alexander Hamilton or the Civil War or George Washington. And with the other ear, she was listening to my jokes and laughing at them. She never stopped laughing at the same jokes. They were always like the first time she'd heard them. And then with her other eye, she'd be watching from the back of the room to make sure none of the students on their laptops was surfing the net. They were all terrified that this is the only professor they had who brings his own private investigator to make sure everyone's not on the net, but using the laptop for good purposes. Many students got to meet Ellen because she was there, and I'm deeply grateful to those who are here today as well. Peter Koo began practicing law in the fall of 1994 when I did. And we immediately were among the 12 or 13 new associates that year. Peter, Elizabeth, and I were designated as the 3 brightest stars in the constellation. So an evil litigation partner, Dan McClune, grabbed all 3 of us. And he would insult us, berate us, make us feel like dirt, but kept asking specifically for the 3 of us, case after case after case. It was a very hard year. Elizabeth killed herself. Peter and I, who survived Dan, became lifelong friends. For the next 27 years, every year, Peter flies into California. He first of all did the wise thing after 6 months with Dan, and instead of killing himself, he just left litigation and went over to the transaction side, where he became a great, great attorney, went up to Seattle, became a great attorney at Microsoft, later became general counsel of Tommy Bahama, so that Ellen and I could get our Tommy Bahama clothes at Corona Del Mar for about 20% off, which still left it 50% more than anybody else sells it for. And then Peter became the general AA counsel at Providence Health, which includes down here in Southland, Hoag Hospital, St. Joe's, and all of those. Peter, having come every year for 27 years to spend 3-4 days on a weekend at our home, I asked Peter to say a few words because he really got to know Ellen incredibly well. Peter, please unmute.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'd like to start by saying, Rabbi, that you are indeed a great rabbi and a great lawyer, but I think only one of those vocations has your heart for as long as I've known you. I'd like to react to a couple of things that you have said, and I'd like to start off really by thanking Debbie and Kinneret and Judy and Elaine for their kind words for Ellen. They certainly resonated with me, your stories did. One of the things you said, Rabbi, was that Ellen knew stuff. And there's a lot in those words. She not only knew stuff. Every year when I would come down, 27 years for a weekend with Dov and Ellen, we would do many things, among which we would sit and we would talk about the last year. This is one of those same time, next year friendships. And when we sat down and talked, it was very clear who was the smartest person in the room. And that wasn't Dov or me. And in spite of that, Ellen was kind and she was humble and she was gracious. And she never made us feel that we were any less intelligent than she was, though clearly we were. One of my most enduring memories of Ellen was when I first met her. And Dov had shared with Ellen before we had met that I have this friend, this Chinese guy, who has spent some non-trivial part of his life looking for good chicken matzo ball soup. And the first time I met Ellen was at her little apartment in LA. And Kinneret, that's the first time I met you. And Arun, that's the first time I met you as well. And when I showed up, that's the first time I met Ellen also. And when I showed up, she had handmade matzah ball for me. And I was so impressed. One, the fact that she had remembered that this was something that I really loved. And then for me, it was a joy too, because, indeed, I had now found the world's best chicken matzo ball soup. And she repeated that ritual for me for many, many years as I came down for our annual visit. And that's a fun story. And then I should share with you my observations, which is something that perhaps only a non-Jew can say. And if I said anything wrong, I'm sure Aharon will correct me when he speaks next. You said, Dov, that you needed to marry this beautiful woman before dessert. And when I met Ellen, my first thought was, this woman is a 10. Okay. And Dov, I love you. Okay. On a good day, you're a 5. Okay. And I said to myself, before dessert, you need to close this deal really fast. Before she realizes, you're really, really, really marrying up. Okay. And thank goodness you did. And it was after dessert, but Dov, you got the deal done. One of the is interesting. The very last time I saw Ellen, I came. Dov said I came once a year, and I actually came twice a year in 2019, because the first time I saw Ellen in 2019, I was worried, and so I said to Grace, who's sitting next to me, that I need to go back, and be sure I have a good time with her. And this was a Sunday morning when Ellen and I were sitting and just talking. And Dov, you hadn't gotten up yet, and it's very interesting. Our friendship is rich in so many ways, one of which is we couldn't politically be any more different. I'm kind of a little bit of a left-wing nut, and Dov and Ellen's, let's just say, are not. And as we sat there in the den, talking, Ellen said to me that, with our friendship, there would never be anything to come between us, much less politics. And that leads me to the next thing, which is, although politics don't come between us, we do have a big difference in terms of sports allegiances. Okay. Dov is a Jets-Giants fan, and I'm a Seahawks fan. And which leads me to my last story about Ellen, which is, as you know, with sports broadcasting, like, you can't watch the team that you support in your area if you don't have a subscription, right? And so there was a Seahawks game, and it was a Sunday morning, and the only way for me to watch it was to go to one of the local, quite frankly, cheesy Orange County sports bars. And, Dov was otherwise occupied, and Ellen, being the just unbelievably gracious person that she is, didn't want me to go by myself, okay? And I didn't, me not being very thoughtful about it, didn't think twice, but I thought, hey, Ellen, of course, why don't you and I go to a cheesy Orange County sports bar? And by the way, Debbie, you'll be happy to know this. This is her, that was her first ever time at a cheesy sports bar. Okay, I didn't know that. I found out after the fact. And so we went in and we sat down, and then, and I will say, okay, I'll have some cheese sticks and some machos and whatever. And I looked at the menu, and it was then that I realized, Ellen, there's nothing on here that you can eat, right? So and then I remember that Dov had told me the beer is kosher. And I said, well, there's beer. And then she said, yes, Peter, beer is kosher, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay, so sorry. I have a million memories, including that, one of our rituals was to go to Shiloh's. Ellen liked her steak black and blue, which I'd never heard of in my whole life. It's basically, it's close to being alive, but Dov does as well. And, it's one of those things that I'll always remember and, be one of our cherished memories. I'd like to end with a quote from a favorite TV show of mine. This was a parent saying goodbye to a child, and the parents, said to the child, "Look, I'm going to miss you." And the child was going off to college. "I'm going to miss you, not because I love you, but because I like you." And the child said, "I like you too." So Ellen, I would say, I miss you, and it's not because I love you, but because I really like you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for those words. Really, I'm so deeply grateful. It was a very precious relationship because it was kind of, didn't know where it was going to go. as a relationship, you were meeting someone brand new. In my congregation, it's only natural as an Orthodox rabbi, most of the people, as I often say, most of my best friends are Jewish, and also the people who hate me most are Jewish. And so you were an interesting addition in my life. One of the reasons people said, how could you have such a close friend who's non-Jewish? You're always doing your rabbi thing. I said, I learned so much from Peter by having non-Jewish friends. I learned about drinking alcohol in the morning. I mean, I'd never been exposed to that before. You need a non-Jewish friend to teach you that. And we, despite coming from different religions and ethnicities, you're Asian, I'm Caucasian, and different religions and all. Nevertheless, we would find year after year, we had the same year. The year that was good for me professionally was a year that was good for you. One year here and there, you'd come back and say, this past year was really lousy, and so was mine. We had absolutely parallel lives. And I'm sure many of the people here are fascinated to learn the answer to one of the questions that bedevils the Jewish world. If all the Jews who are not Orthodox spend December 25th at Chinese restaurants, where in the world do Chinese people go to eat if we're using up all their restaurants? And now they know from you that on December 25th, you're out looking for matzo ball soup. So it was also powerful in that sense. We have two more speakers. My son, Aharon. Aharon got to know Ellen like no one else besides me, because he was 8 years old when she became his bonus mom, his stepmom. So I'm going to invite Aharon to say a few words. Let me just invite you, ask you to unmute. Aharon, can you unmute, please? See if that worked, and otherwise I'll try again. There we go. We'll try again. Okay.
Hiya.
And just as I said with Kinneret, this also fulfills the second mitzvah of Father's Day, so you don't have to make a phone call or even say that you love me. It's okay. You're fulfilling your obligation. I'll still send you a birthday gift.
Happy Father's Day, and I love you. Peter is very special to me because he guilted my dad into buying me my first Xbox. So it is lovely to see you.
Just reminding everybody, Peter was working at the time for Microsoft. I think he did it to get a commission. Go ahead.
Listening to everyone talk, I promise my dad, asked me to prepare remarks, and I really did my homework, I promise. But listening to everyone speak, there's just a way that it feels like anything I have to share feels small, because we don't get to, even the people we love most and spend so much of our lives with, we never get to crawl inside someone's head and see the world the way they see it and see our relationship the way they see it. And I just wish so much that today I could capture how Ellen, sorry, how Ellen would remember Ellen. I think in what people have shared, we've heard that she was wise and gracious and mature and thoughtful and powerful. I have the unique benefit of having seen that she's a lunatic, because I met her when I was 7, and that brought out her 7-year-old. Someone mentioned a little while back this bitch that she would do. She would sit on the couch, but not like a person would sit on a couch. She would sit on the top of on the back of the couch. And she would lock in her knees and kind of throw herself back, so she'd be hanging upside down from the couch. And she was my role model, so I would do the same thing. And we would hang there upside down together. And she would play this character called Vinny the Vulture. I think it would make sense that we were bats, but for some reason she just decided that she wanted to be vultures. She was Vinny the vulture, and I was her son vulture, Valentino the vulture, and we would hang upside down, and she would just pass on her vulture wisdom to me, and she would just like crack herself up and just be cackling upside down, and she couldn't breathe because we were upside down. There's so many memories like that of her. I could do 2 hours easy. Both like the insane playful stuff and the like heart stuff. But yeah, it bothers me that like I was thinking about right after she passed away. My dad and I talked, and I was unpacking some of my memories, and a little while after, ooh, that's a lot of snot. A little while after,
That generation, what can I tell you?
it occurred to me that I was experiencing her tragedy as my tragedy, that it was about like what I lost and not as her tragedy. And that wish that I could, just remember her the way that she experienced her life. I think each of us, we sort of experience the people in our lives through the prism of ourselves. Like we each met Ellen at a particular intersection of ourselves and her. For me, it was that she became my mom when I was 8, and Key spoke to this a little bit, that the relationship between a child and a step-parent is going to be different from the relationship between a child and a parent. And I think in a lot of people's hands, that relationship could have felt thin or superficial. And that there's like a distance between a child and a step-parent maybe, but she closed that distance so easily. And I think that the way she did it was she was just so incredibly generous with her time and her energy. We would spend these Sunday afternoons where we would just go on like endless day-long adventures together, mini golfing and laser tagging. She took me bowling and we would play pool, and she taught me, just in case I ever like ended up in a seedy bar and needed to impress someone, how to shoot pool with the cue behind my back. Classy lady. And as I got older, the generosity grew and just like took different shapes. When I was little, there was my parents, my dad and Ellen would throw me these ridiculous over-the-top birthday weekend extravaganzas. Not over the top, like, I mean, I'm sure they cost a few bucks, but it was like a lot of activities with a lot of children. And it just had to be really exhausting. We would go rock climbing and laser tagging, and one of these, Ellen hopped on some monkey bars and was just swinging along past the monkey bars, and fell and broke her leg. And we had to like run to the ER together. My dad drove the two of us to the ER, and while she was like getting set up on the gurney, she said, "Why don't you two go? There was a restaurant that I love nearby. Why don't you two go and have dinner?" And I was just like thrilled to get to go to my favorite restaurant. And only in retrospect do I appreciate the generosity of, not wanting me on my birthday to have to be in the ER with her. And she's like sitting there with a broken leg. She had to be in so much pain. And yeah, so these are all my memories of her. I also want to be able to honor like what she might have wanted us to talk about. I think a lot of things have been talked about today that she would have loved to have said. And I think something that I got an insight to that other folks might not have is you know, I didn't see her professional life, but I did often we had a lot of long car rides together, and she would regale me with stories from work. She, before her life as a rebbitzen really took off and she accepted that she was a rebbitzen, she was managing fraud investigation at UCLA. And she was a detective. If she needed to get information out of a suspect, what she would do is she had these characters that she would play, and she would call people, and she had like this bubblegum chewing airhead character, and she would ask like really dumb questions to get them to share incriminating information. And when she brought someone in for an interview and she needed to get a confession out of someone, she would fill her office with boxes full of empty binders, and she would write on the boxes evidence and just like stack these boxes all over her office, so people would come in and think she already knows everything. I may as well confess. I do think that was probably like at least for a long time, probably a really important piece of her identity. But I don't know how much is projection. Having a detective for a parent is like having an astronaut for a parent. So it's something that's special to me.
I'm so grateful to you, Aaron. Aaron, I'm so grateful to you for the time you've given us and the memories. As with Kinneret, you've given us insights and brought back memories of everyone from Vinnie the Vulture to some of those times that she spent with you. And that also was part of her specialness. She walked into a crazy house, mainly mine, and I decided I felt so bad about the divorce, and I have a 7-year-old boy. And so for his first birthday, I decided we're going to have 9 birthday parties at the same time. That's what Aaron was saying. And I had to figure out how to say, I presented it as a baseball game. And like the first inning, we're going to go to the park, and the second inning is laser tag, and the third inning is bagels and lunch. And the fourth inning is we're going to a movie, and the fifth inning, we're going swimming. And it's like Ellen came in, so what kind of birthday party is this? It was like a 6-month birthday party. And that was when she had, so when we got to the park, it was the middle of the day, it was sweaty Southern California. And she decided she's going to be part of each step. I never met a tougher laser tag opponent. And that's how she got on those monkey bars. And she underestimated the role of sweat on the palms with it wasn't quite the way she remembered it from 20 years earlier. Thank you so much, Aharon. Final speaker, and then I'm going to play one final piece of music, is Lisa Pearl, nun, who's a member of our shul. Lisa and Barbara Walensky became 2 of Ellen's closest friends as well, and stepped into every single void in that last year or two that Ellen always had handled, setting up Kiddush, setting up Sunday morning women's program, with going out to Starbucks or Coffee Bean and getting the coffee, and helping in so many different ways. So I've asked Lisa to say a few words. She's a professor of language science, I believe it's now called. She's a professor of language science. I won't mention the school because of the society we're in. And again, Lisa, if you would say a few words, and then I'm going to close with a particular song I selected. Go ahead, Lisa. Let me find you and unmute and give you the unmute possibility. I'm deeply grateful to everyone who's been here and who's been here for this program, and to remember someone who is so dear in all of our hearts. But with me, I speak to Ellen every day. I talk out loud 5-10 minutes a day. We believe in the eternity of the soul. We believe it's not just a nice thing to say, or that your spirit floats in the air. And we believe that life is eternal for those who have lived righteous lives, and that she's in Gan Eden, the paradise, the Garden of Eden. And so I do talk to her every day. And go ahead, Lisa, please unmute. I think I've got you set to unmute.
Yeah, I think. So yeah, I just wanted to, share some of my memories. Rabbi Fisher asked me to do that, of Rebbetzin Ellen, who was definitely my Rebbetzin. Like Joseph and I would often joke, if you looked at the dictionary entry of Rebbetzin for us, her picture was there. She was that for us. And she's little Hootie, our daughter's auntie Rebbetzin forever. Right? And of course, there's so many really wonderful moments. I mean, so many, and so many that everyone here has shared. But like I remember the first Young Israel of Orange County Community Seder we attended, and the glorious singing at the end with Who Knows One and Chat Gadya. That exuberance, that just unadulterated enjoyment of the silliness of those songs, that let me know without a doubt that Rebbetzin Ellen and Rabbi Fischer were my kind of people, right? People who really know how to be in the moment and to appreciate things like the most wretched of puns spring up around the Shabbos table, right? And there was this time actually when my parents visited for a Shabbat dinner that that Rebbetzin Ellen and Rabbi Fischer invited them to. And I was just sitting there next to Rebbetzin Ellen, and it was time for Zemirot, and we were swaying back and forth in synchrony as we sang Yom Zeh Mechubad with our little la-di-da at the end, and just holding the last note because it was so much fun to hold it for far too long than you should hold it for. And my mom, she commented afterwards, "You guys look like you were having a really good time." And we were. Like, we always were. We definitely always were. Right? And, I felt the same when we danced and sang for Simchat Torah. It was actually the first time I'd ever in my life danced and sung for Simchat Torah. Was with Rebbetzin Ellen, just going around in a circle with the women each time, singing and holding her hand. And I remember dancing too with her at Hootie's naming, just a few of us on the women's side, and it was still so much fun. I remember all the harmonies that she would sing. She once told me that the musical aspect of Judaism was one of the ways she really connected spiritually to it. Me too. I still hear her harmonies in my head when I sing them to little Hootie, and I've been able to find some of them again out loud, which is just amazing when it happens for Eshet Chayo or for Ki Yesh Me'era Shabbat or Yom Zeh Mekubad with that la-di-da and the Birkat Hamazon, or Doror Yikra with that little part at the end, which and Hootie just loves, right? And Shalom Aleichem. And I remember how at every Shabbat dinner at the end of the Kiddush, right, Rebbetzin Ellen would say, "Welcome, everyone." And every time I heard it, I would feel so good, because by the time, Rabbi Fischer would ask us how our week was, I wouldn't even remember, right? Because I wasn't in that week anymore. I was in Shabbat with Rebbetzin Ellen and Rabbi Fischer and the rest of the Shabbat family, right? That's what her presence did for me all the time, always. And I remember how all of us at the Shabbos table would thank her for having us. And she would always say, "Thank you for being had," right? And it made me smile every time. And it still makes me smile when we do it at our home right now, right? I really also just loved how much Rebbetzin Ellen loved herself playing with language, right? I mean, not just puns, of course, but puns, of course. But our shared delight in rarely used words. Like, I know she always appreciated my huzzahs, right, at the end of my emails. And I remember how she immediately coined Hootie for Lindy's Hebrew name based on Yehudi, right? Lindy's forever Hootie for us now in Hebrew, right? And Hootie gets a kissy on the kepi on behalf of her auntie Rebbetzin every night. And really, I wanted to share kind of a final thoughts more than a memory, but someone a little while ago at work asked me to, find some inner fortitude by thinking of the strong women I know. And that person had very different people in mind for very different reasons, but Rebbetzin Ellen was the first person who came to my mind, right? All the things that I knew she did then, and so many that I keep learning that she did, while being so kind and so welcoming and so joyous, despite all the nuttery, honestly, that was going around her at different points, right? She was my real life Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. And so I try to summon my inner Rebbetzin Ellen these days when I need a little extra grace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. For the last part of today's Haskara, and I've had the whole time, I've had a Yahrzeit candle. I don't know if it was evident, but we've had a Yahrzeit candle here the whole time. For the last part, I wanted to close with a melody. I spent 3 weeks trying to find the right song. And when I finally found the right song, a song you've all heard 1,000 times, 10,000 times. I never really listened to the lyrics before. I just loved the melody. But I listened to those lyrics and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is the song. And then the only problem I had is that I didn't like that every famous singer imaginable has done a cover, a version of that song, and it sounds too slick, too professional. And I spent one 18-hour day trying to find that song with those lyrics sung by someone who didn't sound like it was a slick recording, but also did not sound terrible. And I found one. And so I want to conclude with that. And then I'll come back right after it for a moment. But as you listen to this song, sung by an 82-year-old man in memory of his deceased wife, please imagine those words and understand those words are the words I would have sung if I had sung it properly. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This came from Britain's Got Talent, which is kind of like an oxymoron in the sort. Hope I didn't just blow that. Okay, here we go.
Because she was truly the wind beneath my wings. I'm going to sing you a song that is dedicated actually to my late wife.
Colin, I think it's extraordinary you've come here. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. It must have been cold there in my shadow. To never see sunlight on your...
Beneath my wings. And you put wind beneath my wings, that's the song.
You did your best to make me shine. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory, why you were the one with all the strength. Beautiful face without a name. I never once heard you complain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything that I'd like to be, I could fly higher than an eagle. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wings. It might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I have it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth. I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything that I'd like to be, I could fly higher than an eagle. You are the wind
Thank you so very much. I'm going to conclude with the reciting of the 23rd Psalm of Mizmor LeDavid, and that will conclude today's program. If I don't find it, there we go. Psalm of David. Hashem is my shepherd, I shall not want. In lush meadows, he lays me down. Beside still waters, he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley of shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my tormentors. You anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Hashem forever. Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem roi lo echsar, b'hinot Hashem yarbitzeni, Amei menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi yeshover, nafshi yeshover, yancheni b'mahaglei tzedek l'man shemo. Gam ki elef b'gei tzalma avet lo irara. Ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha, shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan. Neget Sorirai, Dishanta, Vashemen Roshi, Dishanta, Vashemen Roshi, Dishanta, Vashemen Roshi, Kosi Revaya, Achtov, Achtov, Vachesed, Yer Tifuni. Kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai, la-dai-dai-dai, la-dai-dai-dai, liorech yahamim. Thank you so very much for being here. May God bless each and every one of you for the comfort you've given me by being here today, and for remembering. May Ellen's memory, Chana Esther Bas Chaim Ruvain, may her memory be forever in our hearts. May she look down. In a final word, late December at the Hanukkah period, I was on FaceTime with Dad, who was a month away from his 99th birthday, her dad. And at the end of a beautiful phone call, I asked whether he'd like to hear the recording of Ellen's 2 phone messages for Hanukkah parties. He said he'd love to. I asked whether he'd like to hear her singing with me. He said he'd love to. And then I showed him the text of the burial site, the Matseva, the monument. And he was so grateful to me. He was so grateful to have that opportunity. And he passed away 3 weeks later. Glad I was able to share that with him, and he stayed alive to experience that. Thank you all so very much. And for those of you who took time from Father's Day, hope you have a wonderful Father's Day as well. Thank you again to my Loyola Law students and UCI Law students who are here, and to Shul people, family, friends, and everyone. And it's always hard to say goodbye, but it's the right thing for me to do, to let you all go. So thanks for being here. Bye-bye.